Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. You know, it's interesting. My producer Frank and I were discussing before the show. I gotta say, it's probably easier to bet on some of these events in Paris than it is to actually find like the final scores and when they're playing. Like you probably could get more information from the sports betting apps than just online. It is not that easy, Mike. Like you're googling like what's going on with this team, that team. Like I'll Google Canada, I'll get like swimming or something. I'll be like, no, give me basketball. Like it's not the easiest thing to figure out online, unless I guess you're like a psycho with this and you're watching 24/7. But I can only imagine with this being a slow time of the year, being one of the main reasons why people are so engaged on betting on the Paris Olympics. Like right now, Mike, we are about to exit the dead zone of sports.
Yeah, Craig, I totally agree with you. First off, on finding stuff, right? Like Paris is a few hours ahead. I think it makes an optimal time for betting, but it was hard to figure out what time stuff was starting. And then you go to a website, it would be in Paris time, not Eastern Standard Time. So I totally agree with you there. The Associated Press talked to BetMGM, and they project it's going to be the largest bet Olympics in the legal sports betting era. I think it's pretty obvious, given that now I think we have 38 states plus DC. At the time of the Tokyo COVID Olympics, I think we had 22 states. So that obviously is a huge factor. And then, again, if you're a local sports fan, to your point, and you're going on FanDuel, you don't have to go on there at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., local time out in the Olympics. You're getting your games on prime time, whether it's 6 a.m., 2 p.m., whatever it is, because they're so far ahead. It's really optimal for betting. And so I think with the interest of the U.S. men's basketball team, obviously heavy favorites with a pretty solid win over Serbia. Women's basketball team also a favorite. U.S. women's soccer, really nice win over Germany yesterday. A lot of these very popular teams are going to be bet on, whether that's your standard money line spread or your player props, and those are heavily there. And then, like you said, you've got some sports people probably haven't watched. Gymnastics, some other things that we're really good at, but people aren't turning into every day. They're turning in every 4 years, and I think there's a lot of interest in track and field. BetMGM said the 100-meter men's. So there are a lot of great events in the Olympics. Once every 4-year deal, optimal time, expanded sports betting market, and then who knows? Maybe you hope 4 years from now we'll have Texas and California. We'll see whether that's the case.
Right.
It's not a certainty, but again, in 4 years you should have even greater interest because hopefully you have more states, especially the ones that have been difficult to move due to either legislative, tribal, whatever reasons. That they haven't. This should only expand. So incredible time. Really nice to watch some sports you don't usually see. And like you said, slower period with just basically baseball and golf. Now you add in tons of sports, tons of interest, tons of star power.
Yeah, no, look, it's been fun, no question. And the results aside, it's a fun watch when it's live. It doesn't matter what it is. Okay, so now let's get to the business of sports betting. This is what we always lean on you for here, Mike. I saw this again on social media. PrizePicks, who had an opportunity a few months ago, I thought, to potentially get out of the game with all of this peer-to-peer stuff going on in some of these states saying, hey, look, you got to get out of this state and that state. An interesting time to sell if you are PrizePicks. I don't know what this really means and if this will happen, but wouldn't this be a case of sort of selling low if that's the case, or do they fear that there just may not be a business for them in the future?
Yeah, Craig, I think that's great point. We'll see. Right now, it is all speculation. Bloomberg reporting that PrizePicks is exploring mergers and acquisitions. It doesn't seem like they want to sell, according to Bloomberg. And that makes a lot of sense, Craig. If you talk to industry sources in the financial industry in terms of sports books, they'll tell you, PrizePicks is profitable. PrizePicks has a massive customer database. Those are probably their two biggest assets. They've obviously just opened a huge 33,000 square foot headquarters in Atlanta. So none of that really leads you to believe that they're going to sell. Perhaps they do, and this comes out of left field, so we'll see. But certainly in busy time in M&A, we've seen IGT, we've seen Bally's, we've seen Flutter, Boyd, ESPN bet, that rumor out there. Whether any of this stuff comes to fruition, we'll see. As you alluded to, PrizePicks has faced a lot of uproar from various jurisdictions in terms of offering what's deemed illegal against the house fantasy contests. Most notably in Florida and New York. New York, they had to pay a $15 million settlement. We'll see with California. The Attorney General has to decide whether this is legal or not. And if it isn't, then, again, that's another avenue they don't have. Right now, they have a big advantage, to play the long game. If they acquire a small sports book, Greg, They could potentially get California and Texas, you hope in like 4 to 6 years, if not earlier. And, they would have a massive database of players already there to be able to send, promotions, download already have the fantasy app downloaded and can transition to sports betting, because probably a lot of those customers are sports betting customers, not necessarily iGaming. They had this huge advantage. They have a really strong Discord channel, according to people in the industry, that a lot of bettors like to go to, even a lot of bettors that are successful. So, this is a company that has made waves, has made money. FanDuel and DraftKings don't want them around, and obviously have argued properly that what they're doing in terms of against the house is illegal, as regulators have agreed with them. And so we'll see where this goes, whether or not they are able to acquire a sports book, or, somebody comes out of nowhere and acquires them,
Right.
which, again, you would get the database, you would have a profitable company that, again, just built a headquarters, which leads you to believe that's not the case. But that's all speculation on my part to suggest that they're not going to be sold. And that's what Bloomberg says as well. And it in this scenario, feels like more likely that they would acquire a smaller sports book and try to go that direction, really pivot to that regulated marketplace, and potentially ultimately be able to use those advantages they've gained through the databases in California and Texas to expand operations there when those states legalize.
Yeah. Okay. Well, a company we'll keep our eye on here as the summer and fall progresses. iGaming is a hot topic across the country as far as betting on it. New York is no stranger to that. I know a recent poll has come out that I saw that you posted on social media. Not all that encouraging as far as pushing this through, I don't think, based on the numbers here. People could interpret polls any way that they want, Mike, but with these percentages that I'm seeing for iGaming, it would seem to me that it would need to be a lot stronger than this to get pushed through. Am I wrong?
Yeah, Craig, I think, this was not maybe the best numbers. Joe Adabo had polled 532 constituents in his district, which is in Queens, in New York City, and only 44% supported iGaming to legalize it. 33% were against it, and 23% were unsure. So obviously, like you said, you want those numbers in the 50s, 60s. You hope to get to 70s, huge numbers. So not the case, and we'll see where it goes. Adabo's been trying to get iGaming for the last 2 years. He's been unsuccessful, but I think his push will continue until late 2024, 2025, this next session. And he's got a lot of work to do. The Hotel Council, the Trades Council, has been against this. It hasn't had any governor support, hasn't been on the executive budget. That's really where things start if you want to move things. They are working on the downstate casino licenses, which is kind of slow to a crawl. Hopefully get that going. New York legislation doesn't like to do two gaming things at once usually. So, I think there's a lot of things working against this. You hope that, the state needs money. They always feel like the budget, is at a deficit. They need $1 billion. Well, here's where they can get it, by flipping on a switch, basically. All the operators in New York complained about the 51% tax rate. Under the bill that didn't pass, iGaming was 30.5%. And I believe, according to people I just spoke to, I've forgotten this, that would mean that the sports betting operators would drop to 30.5%. That was their big thing at Nickel G's, was we're paying too many taxes, especially in New York. Legislators are like, we're not going to drop them. We're not going to take money away from school kids to give it to corporations. So, you're kind of deadlocked there, and the push will continue. Like you said, not the most encouraging numbers, but, we'll see. This obviously is the last push for Joe Adabo. He's going to be pushing this thing pretty hard coming up next legislative session.
All right. Well, Mike, awesome stuff as always. Enjoy the Olympics, and certainly trade deadline in baseball, I know, coming up tomorrow. I'm sure it'll be very active. We'll keep an eye on it. Thanks again for coming here on NewsWire.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it. I'll be checking your Twitter for updates.